our classmate and dear friend to many, Eric Almquist. Manny, special thanks to you, his wife, for being so collaborative and putting this all together. So thank you. And Robin, yes. I also very quickly want to acknowledge Robin Hogan's task in putting this whole thing together. He's done a wonderful job of communicating and coordinating with Manny, with Manny's family, and also with the gallery. So Robin, you've done an incredible job putting this all together. Thank you. Over to you.
I'm just going to put this on right here. Sure. All right, perfect. Or would you rather put in your shirt? That's fine.
So welcome, sticky stickball players. This is a bittersweet day for all of us because Eric L. Almquist was such a special man. His passing in 2023, September of 2023, was a total shock to everyone in this room except for Nanny, because none of us knew the backstory. Eric should never have lived to 75. He was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma 50 years ago. He was given a massive dose of radiation and told he had a couple of years to live. So when you think about it, he's really lived almost 50 years on borrowed time. So what a blessing. That's what I think about. And did he make the best of those years? He raised 3 wonderful boys, traveled the world with his Stanford sweetheart, Nanny. And along the way, he earned a master's and a PhD in anthropology. How many of you knew that Eric was a PhD? And he became a very successful businessman. Ended up being a partner at Bain. Was a wonderful mentor to many, many men and women. And he could afford, in the latter half of his life, to indulge his 3 passions, which were photography, rock climbing, and rock music. In a few minutes, you're going to hear some anecdotes from some of Eric's closest friends in the class. Some of them couldn't be here, so I've asked a couple of our classmates to stand in and be surrogates for Andy Abbott and Rick Allen, neither of whom could make today, but wanted their voices to be heard. Let me give you the backstory on Eric. He grew up in Valentine, Nebraska. I, for one, have never been to Valentine, Nebraska. But when he came to Andover in 1962 by train, he was not very preppy. Unlike so many of us at that time, we wanted to be the cool guys, as Rick Allen would say, the cool dudes. Eric was quiet, respectful, studious, and a very generous soul. He was not a jock. He was not a cheerleader. He did not play in a band, although he loved music. But here at Andover, in a building adjacent to the Addison, he was introduced by Diz Bensley to the wonderful world of black and white photography. And over time, as you can see from this exhibit, he became a very serious and good, accomplished, creative photographer. And he started collecting photography. And then he started donating the photography to the Addison, which he dearly loved. He was a benefactor of this museum, and in very typical, quiet Eric fashion, donated many important works, some of whom are shown here. And that's why we're in this special place. This is a real privilege to be able to have an event in the Addison. It's reserved for very few classes, and we thank you for making an exception to have us here. We're really fortunate to have both the director of the Addison and the curator of American art with us here this afternoon. And they're going to explain to you how photography fits into the education at Andover and share with you some insights into Eric's work and the collection that he's donated. Allie?
Thank you, Robin. Everybody hear me? Yep. Thank you, Robin and Manny, for all the organization for this afternoon. It's a thrill to host you and to celebrate Eric, his love for photography, and Manny's incredible generosity in donating over 200 works from Eric's collection to the Addison. This is just the tip of the iceberg, so thank you, Manny. I've been at the Addison for 34 years, beginning as an intern and working my way through the curatorial ranks. Eric was a loyal and generous supporter of the Addison, and as a result, I had the privilege and pleasure of getting to know him over the years, even just a little bit. We shared a passion for photography, and our conversations were always centered around photographs and photographers. Yet weaving in and out of those discussions were stories about his time at Andover, growing up in Nebraska, definitely those train rides from Nebraska to Andover, his travels, his love for Ipswich, which is a place I also hold dear, and of course his family. Eric always said the seed for his love of photography was planted right here. And you alluded to that, Robin. I cannot tell you how many alums, no matter what careers they ended up pursuing, say the exact same thing. They frequently cite the photo projects they did with Diz Bensley as being among their favorite memories of Andover. And I recently found an article written just a year after you all graduated. It's a profile of the art program at Andover from the Boston Review of Photography's October 1967 issue. And it speaks directly to the pioneering nature of the Andover art program and photography in particular. It's a little hokey, but it's kind of fun and I think accurate. So I was just going to read a little bit of the intro. Phillips Academy looks like a pleasant enough place to the casual motorist driving on Route 28 through Andover, Massachusetts. It seems remote from the harassments of the real world, worth remembering as a vague destination for a Sunday drive. But Superman knows better. With his powerful X-ray vision, he can penetrate the ivied walls of brick and see Phillips for what it really is, one of the most dynamic secondary schools in the country, a school which maintains a sevenfold program in photography that even a man with supervision must find amazing. The story of the program is worth telling because it reveals that ideals can occasionally be realized in the here and now. The article goes on to describe the partnership of Bart Hayes, then Addison director, and Diz in developing the photo program and using it as a way to cultivate visual literacy in all students. It highlights the basic design course in which students first made photos using flashlights and other light sources. I don't know if you remember that. Graduated to making photos with 98-cent plastic cameras, and eventually moved on to working with larger format cameras and experimenting with slide tapes. I'm not quite sure what that is. Maybe you can tell me, but I think it's films made from slides. It also mentions the Wingate Payne photographer in residence who taught advanced classes, and of course the Addison's role in amplifying everything the students were learning through its permanent collection and regular photo exhibitions. The profile concludes by saying, it can be said that photography is good for Phillips and Phillips is good for photography. Superman has known it all along, but now that the word is out, perhaps other schools will re-examine their own photo programs in the light of what is being done at Phillips. And I would say this holds entirely true today. Art continues to thrive at Andover, backed by an art department that includes 8 faculty members and 26 courses listed in the upcoming course catalog for the next academic year. One of those courses is Art 400, the curating seminar co-taught by the art department and the Addison, which allows students to mine the collection and create their own exhibition. So surrounding you today in this room is this year's result. And as you can see, it leans heavily on photography, just as it does every year. Photography continues to represent more than half of the Addison's overall collection. The collection in all media numbers over 29,000 objects to date. So we have over 15,000 photographs in the collection. And the holdings include singular, iconic photographs alongside deep career-spanning holdings from legendary artists such as Edward Muybridge, Robert Frank, and many others. With Nanny's magnanimous gift of the works Eric collected, and eventually, we hope, examples of his own work, we have examples here today, I feel the seed planted right here for Eric has come to full bloom. These works offer students, they've only been here a short time, but they offer students a powerful springboard from which to consider complex ideas and concepts across all disciplines. Gordon Wilkins, our Robert M. Walker curator, and I wanted to share a few highlights from this gift today and talk about just a few of the ways they perpetuate Andover's teaching mission. But on a more personal level, I think these photographs serve as a wonderful portrait of Eric, his unique interests, and the distinct way he saw the world. As such, they are a meaningful tribute to an exceptional human being and a life well lived. So thank you, and I'll hand it over to Gordon to give just a little fun facts about what we have and how we've already used them.
So just to confuse you even more, we've commingled Eric's work with work by other photographers. But you'll see there's certainly a lot of cross-pollination and dialogue that goes on between Eric's work and works by other photographers that he collected over the years. I think taken together, the collection really does demonstrate that Eric was such a voracious collector and passionate about photography broadly, but then there are great strengths within the collection. So one of the great strengths is Western imagery. So I'll just start with this incredible 5-part piece here by the American photographer Mark Klett. Eric also, I think it's worth noting, never saw this work in this format. It was unframed when we acquired it. And I hope that he would have been pleased to have seen it framed this way. It was immediately put into a show, as were a number of these works called Captive Lands. And actually, Nanny's gift really helped me to pivot one of my sections more into Western-specific imagery. This incredible 5-part Mark Klett piece, which incorporates historic photographs on either side. So on either side of the 3 center photographs are 19th century images by the photographer Hillers. And then Mark Klett has kind of filled in. He did a lot of work looking at the passage of time in natural places, in national parks, etc. This was a great anchor in that room, along with a number of other wonderful gifts from Eric. This is a 19th century photograph by the great Western photographer Carlton Watkins of Mount Shasta in California. So lots of Western imagery. You can see this great Richard Mizrak, an artist who was not particularly well represented in our collection. This remarkable, one of his kind of nocturnal flash, otherworldly desert images, really fantastic. Robert Adams is also quite well represented. I think there's a nice dialogue to be had when you look at Eric's photographs, and I'll just demarcate Eric's photographs. So Eric's photographs on the table start here and continue to the end, and then we have 2 of Eric's wonderful multi-part photo collages here, but the rest is from the collection. So this beautiful Robert Adams photograph is actually of the Nebraska State Highway. So I think you see amazing, really deeply personal connections to the places that were dear to him. So we have Nebraska, a place that was of course very dear, and then we have here Ipswich, another location that was very dear to the family, represented by a beautiful group of this. This is just one of many images by Arthur Wesley Dow. That Eric donated. Arthur Wesley Dow is quite well represented in the collection, but we didn't have these particular images. So it's really amazing how Eric collected, without necessarily the Addison in mind as the ultimate, maybe not strategically with each purchase thinking of how it would fit in the Addison's collection, but he had this incredible vision of collecting sort of around things that we were collecting, but not collecting exactly the same images, and then collecting in areas and with artists that we had no work by. For example, I just wanted to point out this fantastic and very playful Nina Cacciadorian photograph. This is from a series that she called Lavatory Self-Portrait in the Flemish style. So she very famously, whenever she was on a plane, would go into the lavatory and fashion these sort of Dutch 17th century ruffs and headgear and all kinds of stuff out of toilet tissue. So I think we didn't have, I'd love to work forever, we didn't have anything. When this was on the list of works in Eric's collections, we were really excited, jumped at it. Other playful works, this great O. Winston Link, we didn't have this image, which is one of the arguably most famous in kind of 20th century American photography. We also, I think, represented are the friendships that Eric and his family developed with photographers, particularly Barbara Bosworth, whose work was collected in incredible depth and is a really remarkable Massachusetts-based photographer who taught for many years at the Mass College of Art. We really amplified our representation. I think we had maybe 4 or 5 photographs, now we have over 20, by Barbara Bosworth, all courtesy of Nanny and Eric. Just some kind of incredible images of family. I think, of course, family was a deep passion, and there is, maybe not explicitly, but there is this through line of family images. A great color Louis Four photograph of a family at Times Square. This very kind of disturbing but incredibly fun Gary Winogrand of a man standing under a boardwalk, his head cut off. Sally Mann, we were really thrilled. We have a number of Sally Mann immediate family prints in our collection, but not this one, which is one of my favorites, the Sorry Game. This was a great, great treat to be able to bring this into the collection. Artists like Judith Joy Ross, she has documented primarily children, amazing portrait practice, a beautiful, beautiful print. And then one of the pièces de résistance, and I'll bring you over here. And this is maybe what I personally was super, super excited about when we found out that we might have a chance to get this. So this will be the big reveal, if I can find the right key.
It might be a
So this came to us in 2 boxes about this size each. So Eric purchased this work, which is by Lou Thomas, who is a remarkable, totally under-recognized, but brilliant West Coast Bay Area conceptual photographer who was really the founder of what is considered to be the language of photography movement. It's really just 3 photographers, but they were very significant in San Francisco. This is Time Equals 36 Exposures, Positive and Negative. This is one of the great works of conceptual photography. We were really thrilled when this became available to us because this is something that I coveted. I actually did a show that involved Lou Thomas's work, but this was something that was kind of out of our reach. It was in, there were 32, 64 unmounted photographs in a little box that we were able to mount and present and hopefully we'll put on view very soon. I should mention before I stop talking, a number of these works have been on view in other contexts. For example, the Sally Mann photographs were in a show that our colleague Rachel Vogel curated on family photographs. There's really no end to the possibilities of what we can do with this incredible gift. And then, at the end of the program, I know a number of you have looked already, but please do feel free. Nanny lent us a number of books of Eric's photographs. We have some original prints, sort of earlier work here. This is a fantastic series. I had no idea, it's all kind of clicking into place. The anecdote about the massive dose of radiation and then the deep interest in nuclear testing. I'm wondering if there is some sort of connection there. It's really fascinating. So still learning new things. But Eric did an amazing series of photographs at the Trinity Test site out west. Those are in this box, and we can help you look through. We have some other Barbara Bosworth photographs. Oh, Jim Dow, I should also mention, a really good family friend of the Almquists, is well represented in the gift. And we have some other beautiful photo collages by Eric. So this is just the tip of the iceberg, but we wanted to give you a nice overview of just how expansive and incredible this gift is. Thank you so much.
was great, Gordon. Oh, boy, students are so lucky to have people like you instructing them. It's just, your knowledge and your enthusiasm is infectious, so thank you so much. I think the highlight of this afternoon is to hear from your classmates about our friend Eric. And I'm going to ask John Hilly to kick it off. John?
Well, as Robin said, it's bittersweet, but I'm going to stick to the sweet stuff because I was so privileged that Eric was my roommate senior year. And my backstory is that I came to Andover as an upper, and I'd lived in a very permissive atmosphere, I would say, before that. My father was in the service, and we were in France. And if you could reach the bar, you were definitely in. And so, school was not much of a challenge. So here I come to this place, this learning center with all its discipline, and lived in Paul Revere with many of the people in this room, and with Eric, of course. And then I don't know how we decided to become roommates senior year, but it was a godsend for me. Because, I mean, we all know what a great guy Eric is, and Eric was. And, you know, just that Midwestern humility, that kindness. And the thing that really saved me, though, is that he was so organized and he was so orderly and a good detail man. And so here I come we were living in Day North for senior year. And of course, Eric being the neat one, I was relegated to the little cubby in the back, and Eric got the nice big room so we looked presentable to everybody. And so here we are, and it was just an awakening for me because Eric had mastered the place, really. He knew how to have fun, despite looking like a pure innocent. He really wasn't. And you know, he knew how to check the boxes. He knew how to do the work, but also do the play. He knew how to take time to be with people. And it just struck me so much that, you know, there's a time to play and there's a time to work. And I remember one of the things, and many of us have heard this, that he was most proud of was the geometry prize that he won in lower year. And I think it was Cornelius Banta that he was trying to impress. And he went to him and said, I'm going to win that geometry prize. And he, you know, just studied and studied and studied. And actually, on every telling, it's more studying, of course. But he won the prize. And it's one of the things that's always stuck with me about Eric, that, you know, he knew how to focus down. He knew how to commit himself, and he knew how to achieve results. And so it was really a gift to me to be mentored. And, you know, that's the word I honestly think of when I think of Eric, as a roommate who was, you know, just what I needed at the right time, and a guy who had a major impact on my life. And, but now, you know, since it is the sweet part, I want to just turn to a few examples of the times with Eric that always bring a smile to my face. And so the first one is the time he talked me into rappelling off the third-story fire escape of Day North. Now, they've taken it down for good reasons, but so I'm thinking, okay, Eric, you're from Nebraska, and you're telling me that you're an expert in, you know, this rock climbing stuff. He says, oh, yeah, I know what I'm doing. And so he was pretty persistent. So one day, I guess I lost my senses. I go out there. He straps me up with all the harness and everything like this, and then I find myself 3 stories up, on top of the fire escape, looking off at the ground. And he goes, well, okay, now I got 2 things to tell you. Don't let go of the rope, he says, and don't get tangled up in the rope, especially around your neck. And I go, Eric, am I going to die? You know, he said, no, just don't let go of the rope. And so, you know, I start my way down this thing. And then there's Eric at the bottom waiting for me. And he helped me pry my hand loose. And then he says, I didn't kill you, did I? He says, how about again? I said, Eric, the good Lord gave me 2 legs and I'm never doing that again. So, but he was a committed and passionate and accomplished rock climber, as it turns out. And he pursued it, you know, long after Andover. Now, the second one is one that's not well known at all, because it was really maybe the highlight of my athletic career, given how well the basketball team did here. But one day, well, we had as our house counselor in Day North a really good guy named Tom Brayton. And he passed about last year, and he taught Latin here, and he went on for a career teaching at prep schools in the classics. And so for us, he was a great guy because all the infractions he found us doing, he never turned us in, which was deeply, deeply appreciated. But one day, he was a real athlete. He was on the Princeton varsity soccer team. And so he starts talking. He says, I'm faster than you guys. I can beat you. I'll prove it. I'll take you out and I'll race you guys. Now, Eric was an athlete. He ran the hurdles. I ran cross country and track. We were 17 years old at the prime of our abilities. And so we're thinking, okay, he's a soccer player. That means that, okay, he's quick off the start, but then it's pass it to that guy, rest, rest, rest. Here comes the ball, pass it to him, rest, rest, rest. And so we're thinking, okay, we're ready to do this. And Tom wasn't backing down. We said, oh, no, we can beat you. So one sunny day, I think he had a Mustang convertible. He drives us out to the track where it sits today, way out in the corner. He said, pick your distance. And we're thinking, okay, we can't let him get away with 100 yards. He might beat us at that. So we said, we'll do the quarter mile. And one reason for that was, any of you who have suffered through the track team, is that I think it was Thursdays, it was called quarter day. And you'd go out and you'd run a quarter mile as fast as you can. Then you take a couple minutes, and you run another one, and then another, and then another. And so we said, okay, we'll do the quarter mile. And so we line up, and Tom goes, go. Well, he took off like a rabbit at a greyhound race. And we're going, whoa, okay. And so we're loping behind him. And then coming around that first corner, we see him getting ahead of us a little bit. And then we just put it in high gear. And honestly, we just blew right past him because he had his spurt. And then we looked behind us, and there it is. He had flopped, which soccer players are well known for. But he had given up. And he's walking back across the interior of the field, and he's getting in his car. And he says, you guys ride back. Eric and I look at each other, and we high five or whatever was the equivalent. Here we are, just beat this guy. And it was, like I said, one of the highlights of our Andover athletic career. Now, the last one is the last time I really was able to spend time with Eric, which was one of our Andover golf outings. And I loved to play with Eric because between us, we had the two most awkward golf swings in the entire Andover community. And so it was just nice to see us out there together. But in any case, we were roommates again, which was just wonderful. And so I had a chance to talk to Eric, about his life and where he'd come and such like that. And he was incredibly happy with his life, his family, his career, where he'd come in life and everything about it. Same decent guy. And the other thing was he was still working for Bain. And so, play some golf, get on that phone, do some consulting and, just orderly, and was able to just handle a plethora of things. Still an incredibly just wonderful, organized, and great guy. And then the thing he told me that really, really stuck with me, he said, I'm reaching the point in my career where I'm not so active in consulting, but I love mentoring the young people. And that really stuck with me again, because I thought, man, this guy really helped me through my Andover career. And he was just an amazing, great guy. And so at the end of his career at Bain, he turned to helping the younger generation, helping people that he knew he could just bring along and help form into the kind of person that he was. And so, Eric is just a person I'll never forget. We'll always miss him, but just to him, I say thank you.
That was great, John. Thank you so much for sharing those anecdotes. Rick Allen, who's loved by many in this room, is not up to traveling. So I'm delighted that we're taping this little ceremony. And we wanted to hear Rick in this room. So I asked Warren Baker if he would read a passage about Eric written by Rick Allen. Warren?
Yeah, I'm reading the passage, but it's so short, I think I can
Good.
do it from memory.
Great.
And the story's not a long one and not nearly as entertaining as John's, but, you know, Eric was kind of a farm boy from Nebraska, a long way away. We all heard about him taking the train in. Well, Thanksgiving rolls around, and we all know folks from distant lands couldn't get back to their homes for Thanksgiving. So Rick invites Eric down to Bronxville for Thanksgiving. They had a lovely time, of course, but Eric was already dabbling in photography, and the thing that Rick Allen treasures the most is a photograph that your husband, Nanny, took of his parents from way back that Thanksgiving when we were all here. I don't know which year it was. But anyway, as I said, I don't really have much to say, but he just, as I said, really wanted you to know his heartfelt appreciation and fondness for your husband. So that's all I've got.
Thanks, Warren. Marty Geiger, you want to join us up here?
I met Eric Almquist in September of 1963, which is nearly 63 years ago. We were both assigned rooms in Clement House. For those of you who may not remember, Clement House was built in the mid-1800s, housed about 12 boys, and is located on the fringe of the Andover campus. In fact, it is closer to Draper Hall and Abbott Academy than to Sam Phil on the campus here. Eric had started out at Andover as a junior, and those of us who were new that year as lower middlers, Eric and his roommate Topper Lynn provided great information, guidance, and advice to many of us, and I certainly needed plenty of their help. Early on, I found myself struggling in math class. I had a teacher whose name was Cornelius Banta. They referred to him as Santa Banta, but he never gave me any gifts. I was put in that class, Advanced Algebra and Probability, for reasons I never understood because everyone else in my lower middle year was taking some other kind of course in math. Fortunately, Eric knew this teacher. Either he was taking the same course or he had was taking a course with Mr. Banta. And I asked Eric for help, and he graciously assisted me in translating the things I didn't understand that this teacher would say. I found it very difficult to understand, and obviously my results in the class were proving that. In fact, I nearly flunked the course by midterms. Eric helped me, he tutored me, he got me through the year, and ultimately I passed the course, for which I was very grateful. The following summer, July and August, my parents felt I needed some special math enrichment to restore my confidence in my ability to do math. So I was sent to a local summer school in Mamaroneck, New York, a nearby town. At the same time, Eric was visiting New York and went to the New York World's Fair. And he wrote to me. Now, in those days, people put an email. He sent me a typewritten postcard where he explained how much he enjoyed the fair. And he commiserated with me that I was stuck in summer school classes. Throughout the years at Andover, Eric was always kind, thoughtful, and sincere. He was a person you could rely on and always trust. We reconnected and renewed our friendship at the 25th class reunion in 1991. By this time, we were both married, we had children, and our careers were well established. Prior to our 45th reunion in 2011, Eric and I discussed the idea of going back to revisit Clement House to see what changes had been made in it over the years, to revisit the rooms we were in where we had special memories. He made the arrangements with the alumni office, and indeed, in June of 2011, we toured Clement House. The interior of the building had been largely reconfigured, but we were able to locate the spaces where our rooms had been, and we took copious pictures of each other in the spaces that we had occupied. It was a nostalgic homecoming. We also spent time in the ground floor room, which had served as the living room of the housemaster at the time. We had gathered there, as we all gathered in places on this particular day, on Monday, November 25th, 1963, to watch President Kennedy's funeral on Housemaster Carl Rohrig's black and white television. It was a special moment to go back to that time and to remember how we felt, where we were together, to live through that. I have reproduced, as Robin mentioned, numerous pictures of that return to Clement House back in 2011. And I have placed them on the table back there as you exit, along with envelopes. I encourage each of you to take at least 2 photographs. You'll have a memory of Eric 15 years ago at Clement House. It brings a special joy to me to have those pictures. And of course, Eric had, on his part, taken pictures of me back at that time and shared them with me over the years. We didn't know until November of 2022, when we were on campus for the dedication of the Christopher Lynn Swimming Pool Complex, that Eric required surgery to address his profound cardiac problems. 6 months later, in May of 2023, he wrote of his disappointment and frustration that his surgery had been postponed. Yet at the same time, he expressed his gratitude for the years of good health that he had been afforded to pursue and enjoy the activities he loved the most: hiking, mountain climbing, and of course, photography. Eric's passing in September 23 was a terrible shock to all of us, and we continue to mourn his loss. Yet this display of photography gives us the opportunity to celebrate Eric's life and some of the work that was most precious to him. It is a true gift from Eric to us and the Andover community. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty, and thank you again for your thoughtful gift of all those photographs. Andy Abbott is another very accomplished member of our class who unfortunately had a conflict today. But I asked Al Basil if he would come up and read some beautiful passages that Andy wrote right around the time of Eric's death. Al?
I'm really honored to read Andy's comments about Eric. But before I do that, I just have a little snippet of my own to add, because there are probably people in this room who arrived in the fall of 1962 and who spent their 9th grade year here. How many of you are there? Any of you in Mr. Menard's history class? Okay. As were Eric, and I was also in that class. So you'll remember that Mr. Menard, who was a veteran master at the time and who had his quirks, used to sit behind his desk with a wooden pointer with a rubber tip. Remember this? And he would bend it to the point, he had our attention because it seemed it was about to snap at any moment. But he would bend it and we would look, and he would bend it and he would look. And then he would ask us a question. And for years after this, whenever I would see Eric, I would kid him because Eric would make comments in history class that evoked from Mr. Menard. Mr. Menard would go, "Judas Priest, Almquist." So Mr. Menard's comments notwithstanding, it was literally impossible not to like Eric Almquist. So now I really am honored to have Andy Abbott's tribute by way of reminiscence. And so let me read this for him. Losing Eric was very sad for me. He had been the one Andover classmate I had never lost touch with. And we had watched their kids grow up and sent our kid to the same summer camp as theirs on Eric and Nanny's recommendation. Eric and I talked off and on about social science, methods, economics, values, and such like for many years. Eric still kept up with some academic ideas and had vague plans to revisit his work on Irish economic history in his ever-postponed retirement. He would have been happy that Joel Mokyr, with whom he had been in contact many years ago, won the economics Nobel last year. He was a man of many selves, to be sure. He had whole worlds of friends in photography and alpinism whom I did not know and with whom he may have been a completely different person. Undoubtedly, the only people who knew the whole man were Nanny and his brother Adrian. He and Adrian remained close and visited Valentine often, sometimes for golf vacations, and in 2017 for the solar eclipse. Or again, Eric and Nanny sponsored wonderful birthday parties at the Chilton Club on round years like age 60 and 70, since they both had birthdays in January. Or again, the whole family was an amazing group. I can remember once visiting them when our son was little and their kids had just taken up climbing. The two elder boys were trying to see if they could climb across the entire kitchen cabinetry out into the dining room where they were standing on the windowsills. How far could one make it without falling down? So he's a great loss for me, as I am sure for many others. Secondary effects of cancer treatment got him in the end. All they could do for Hodgkin's disease in those days was throw the book at it. And I can remember sitting with Eric in a Watertown apartment one day in the mid-1970s, trying to help urge him to drink yet another chocolate milkshake of chemo. He had no taste, and the stuff tasted like chalk. I felt totally inadequate, stiff, and helpless. But Nanny got him through, even with a kid in the cradle nearby. And that misery got him 50 years of vibrant life, of developing business analytic techniques, of climbing mountains, of making dazzling photographs, of helping raise 3 boys. Eric made the most of life and left a lot of us the better for his gift of friendship. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. I'm sure Andy will enjoy seeing his remarks read to this group. Our final speaker is our Nobel laureate, our Rhodes Scholar, Rick Redmond. Rick? You're up. I thought I was somewhere.
Thank you, Robin. Well, this is a great place to get to talk about Eric because as Joe Siebens and I were talking about at breakfast, Eric and Joe and I, and probably others of you, we all started out in Diz Bensley's photography class right next door here. And that launched Eric, of course, and a great course, but also Joe, who's gone on to be a documentary filmmaker and so forth. I'm only speaking today because Robin asked me to, and I'm not speaking from the me now. I'm speaking from me in 2023 when Eric died, and I was completely shocked because I had a conversation with him in which it was clear that he had the operation yet to come. He knew it was serious. He knew that in the long run, obviously things were not going to always work out, but I don't think he had any expectation at all at that moment that this might be the end. And I think that threw me off, particularly because at this age, we're not young anymore. I think most of us are middle-aged now. We probably, all of us have spent time with a dying friend and had conversations that you have with a dying friend when they're dying, and those special conversations in life. They're unique in that particular circumstance, I can say. And maybe if you're like me, you've probably envisioned some of your own, like, I hope I can get my ex-wife to come when I'm dying and have a conversation with her, things like that.
But I would have given anything to have had that conversation with Eric. But the last conversation I had with him, he was not concerned. Or, as Nanny, I think, would say, he wouldn't let us know he was concerned. Right. So I sent an email to Robin, and Robin wanted me to read it. So this is from 2023. I said, my heart is really broken. I had a very tough night last night. Of course, as Hobbes rather cynically observed, the deaths of others impact us in part, not just because of the terrible loss, but also at some level, because the inescapable reminder of what we are facing ourselves. I find it rather odd that I am more confused about death, less scared, but more confused, rather than less confused the closer I come to it myself. I really think that death is a major design flaw. No one really seems to do much about correcting it. Fortunately, at Andover, we were taught to read Death Be Not Proud by John Donne. Unfortunately, the poem really works best if you believe in an afterlife in heaven. If there is an afterlife in heaven, Eric Almquist surely deserves to enjoy it. What a wonderful human being he was. Basically unmatched for members of the class of 1966, if you think about it. This is just ridiculously sad. So for those of you who may not remember it, but to capture the spirit of where I was then, here is Death Be Not Proud by John Donne, which is one of his holy sonnets. Death, be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. For those whom thou think'st thou dost overthrow, die not, poor death, nor yet canst thou kill me. From rest and sleep, which but thy pictures be, much pleasure, then from thee much more must flow, and soonest our best men with thee do go, rest of their bones and the soul's delivery. Thou art slave to fate, chance, kings, and desperate men, and dost with poison, war, and sickness dwell, and poppy or charms can make us sleep as well, and better than thy stroke. Why swellest thou then? One short sleep past, we wake eternally, and death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die.
Thanks, Rick. Now we're very privileged to hear from Nanny to give us a little more of the backstory of Eric L. Almquist.
From the very first, my life with Eric was filled with photography. On our first date, he asked me to help him with an advertising shoot at a local sports store for the Stanford Chaparral, our university's attempt at the humor magazine like the Harvard Lampoon. Eric had signed on to doing ads in order to gain access to one of only 2 darkrooms on the Stanford campus, the other belonging to the student newspaper. Beginning at Andover, Eric's life was full of photography, both his own and later when he began to make money in the business world with the photography of others, mostly Americans. After college, he created darkrooms in the various places we lived, and when he couldn't, he would still shoot and develop film until he could once again print. In the mid-'80s, inspired by David Hockney's photo collages, Eric began his own series of collages. He resisted digital photography for a long time, but finally adopted it and became a complete convert, taking private lessons in Photoshop to be able to produce the best prints possible. I'm so pleased that the Addison was willing to accept most of his collection of photos by American photographers, and I'm deeply touched by today's event in honor and memory of Eric. Thank you, Robin, Ali, and Gordon. And I have just one off-the-cuff comment, which is, living with such a fine photographer for so many years has ruined me for looking at anything other than really good prints.
Thank you, Nanny. I'm so glad you could bring Cassie to this. I'm sure she appreciates.
I have to say, Eric absolutely adored her and took some great photos of her.
So we'd like to invite anyone who feels moved to just stand in place and say anything about Eric. I couldn't talk to everyone in the class who was close to him. Topper, I know you were very close to Eric, but don't want to put you on the spot. But this is sort of open mic. You're among friends, and we want to just make sure this tribute has every bit of richness that is in this room. Any takers? Topper, come on up.
I'll do it.
Come on up. Great.
And it's an amplification and a minor change to what you said. Because I was in Menard's class, I was also, it's right there in your notes, boys. Page 19. I was also in Santa Banta's class. And indeed, Eric worked so hard in that geometry class. And the famous saying every time Eric and I got together was, do you remember Santa Banda? First of all, he'd take a cigarette in the 10-minute break between classes. And for the next 50 minutes, you'd see little wafts of smoke coming out. But his famous comment to Eric was, Judas Priest Almquist, I've seen third graders do better work. And that got Eric the geometry prize. So motivating.
Any other spontaneous talks? If not, we're delighted that Bog Bogman could be here, who teaches piano at the Academy. He's going to tickle the ivories for another half hour. If you want to stick around, please look at the work from Eric and the pieces he's donated. I hope you have a better sense of this incredible resource that we probably took for granted 60 years ago. And just to remind you that tomorrow we're going to have a memorial service at 4 o'clock in the spectacular Falls Music Center across campus, just behind the old Peabody, to remember the other great members of our class who are no longer with us. That concludes our program. Again, Nanny, thank you for coming. I know this wasn't easy, but you were heroic to share these photographs and share Eric's wonderful life with us. I think I feel much richer today. Thank you. I think we're adjourned.